What up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Fatboyz Dynasty podcast show hosted by the Fantasyholics Podcast Network. Coming back at you with that sick intro that our man Jay from Fantasyholics created just for the two special fat guys here. We're coming at you this week with an exciting episode. It could have been more exciting for sure than what it is, but here we are coming in to break down the draft recap, the fallout from this year's NFL rookie draft. If you were with us on that 4-hour live, a little over 4-hour live last Thursday, thanks for being a part of that. Some old faces there for sure. And then we had our resident expert on the hill there watching the draft. Somebody's shoulders are still getting iced down from them having to give him a boost to see the stage. But Brant, how was it? How was it being in person?
It was good, exciting. I'm sorry, guys, I couldn't get the 40 times out there. I couldn't stand in that long line to wait about 5 hours, but it was fun. It was exciting, a good experience. We got to see Tyreek made a random show. Tyreek Hill had a random show up there, did some interviews in the crowd and talked to a few people. We saw RG3, a couple people came into the crowd. We ended up getting down there about 100 yards from the stage. It was a good time, good experience, good atmosphere. Definitely will be a plan in the future, but I'm going to have to find out how to get some media credentials to get a little closer. That way I don't have to jump on anybody's back to be able to see when we're on the clock. But the way the NFL has it set up, it is set up very nicely for almost everybody. They have the big old TV screens on the sides and everything. It's a very fun experience. If it ever comes around you, I advise at least going out there for day one and checking it out.
So the bigger question I have, Brant, is did anybody happen to get lucky enough to bump into you, recognize you, and nab themselves a Fantasyholics podcast T-shirt?
Nobody did bump into me. I mean, I am a lot of people bumped into me. That's just because, I'm a wee
gravitational pull
to the ground.
No, gravitational pull.
I was just assuming they didn't see me as they're just looking forward and not looking down. But I do still have 2 shirts, and I believe we're going to be setting up a giveaway here in the next couple of weeks to be giving out some shirts, some Fantasyholics Fatboyz shirts. So be out on the lookout for that. Be looking at the post, be listening to the cast. We'll put out how to do it. I have 2 of them to give away. And so be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, absolutely, Brant. So I will say this. It was a long night Thursday without my fatter half. Definitely enjoyed hanging out with Patrick and Josh. Brant, I know you missed this, but Patrick, to be with me and Josh, had to endure a tornado warning in his living room while the rest of his family was downstairs seeking shelter. So there was some dedication happening here at the Fantasyholics to be live. Definitely some triumph for me, and then Patrick as a Colts fan was a little disappointed by their pick, and then Josh as a Giants fan was just overall disappointed by the Eagles killing it, which is no shame at this point. Nothing unexpected. But here we are, Brant. We finally don't have to talk about landing spots a whole lot anymore, except for today, because landing spots are beneficial, and we've said for the last several weeks, you and I, that landing spots mean so much to these rookies. And now there's no more guesswork, right? A lot of these guys have either been drafted or signed undrafted free agents. But all these fantasy weapons have homes now at this point. So, let's go through each team here and talk about their fantasy relevant ads that may or may not took place at this draft. We'll talk about whether it was a good value for the team, and we'll talk about if there's any value for the player. How do you feel about that, Brant?
Sounds good to me. And yes, I definitely am your fatter half now after all the good barbecue eaten over the last few days. We'll just say I've been a spoiled little brat, and I don't know if I could go back to the barbecue around here.
Yeah, that's fair. It's good news. It's only 6 hours from here. You can go back if you so choose. You and Jacob Toft can ride in that car back together again and go eat some barbecue. So, all right, so let's talk about the first team here. Arizona, they didn't really do a whole lot fantasy relevancy-wise. They did draft a third-round wide receiver by the way of Michael Wilson from Stanford. Brant, what's your take on this move?
Right now, I don't have anything big with Rondell Moore and Hopkins still there in town. Zach Ertz coming back from an injury. If Hopkins gets dealt, which I assume eventually he probably will, or he'll hold out of some sort, Wilson could have some fantasy relevancy as of right now. He's just kind of guy sitting there on the cusp of being the 4th, 5th wide out there.
Yeah, also Marquise Hollywood Brown there as well after that trade last year. D-Hop did come out today talking on his Instagram saying, I don't know who said I want out. I'm here. I'm ready to be here in regards to Arizona. So maybe change of heart there with D-Hop. But yeah, I'm the same way. Not a whole lot of value here for me. Maybe a guy you snag at end of drafts if you just have to fill a taxi spot or whatever. You got late picks in your draft. You would take dart throws. If D-Hop does get traded later in the season or holds out, this could be some value there. All right, moving on to the consensus 101. Nothing's changed here, right, Brant? Bijan Robinson to my Atlanta Falcons with the 8th overall pick.
The only thing that may have changed in my mind is I thought him as a top 5 pick in startup leagues. This could put him almost in a top 2 pick right now with how much volume that there should be there. You guys have Algier with no real draft capital, and you got 38-year-old Cordero Patterson. That's about it. Bijan could easily move up into that 101, 102 spot in startup leagues now also.
Yeah, he's already there for me. I think he was close there going into the draft, as long as he didn't fall to a terrible landing spot. But he actually goes to one of the better efficient run teams from last year, who the Falcons then turned around and took a left guard in the 2nd round, and Matthew Bergeron, who's going to make that offensive line even better. This is a no doubt set it and forget it 101 in your rookie picks, even if it's a super flex, I don't care, as well as in dynasty startups, just because of age, landing spot, what he's going to have moving forward for the next few years. This is the guy in my mind in dynasty rankings right now. Obviously, we'll take a deeper look at that. Brant will peel back some layers and dive in as we do our rankings. But I love Bijan's landing spot. Obviously, it helps that I'm repping all the Falcons gear and just a Falcons fan in general. But all right, moving on. Baltimore, your favorite spot for a wide receiver, or one of your favorite spots. We talked about this as a landing spot prior to the draft. I disliked it as a landing spot. You liked it a little bit. Zay Flowers, 1st-round pick to the Baltimore Ravens.
I liked it when I knew that Lamar was on the cusp of possibly holding out. Now that Lamar has signed, we have seen him. He's not very accurate. He's a running back. He's now the highest paid running back in the NFL now. He just happens to have 2 different letters in front of his name rather than RB. I absolutely hate it. I am not falling on that sword again. I did 2 years ago with Rashad Bateman. I'm not falling on this sword. Zay Flowers takes a huge hit in my rankings for rookie wideouts. I love some tight ends almost better than him right now.
All right, so does Zay Flowers do anything to Rashad Bateman in your mind?
Yes, absolutely he does. Obviously, Baltimore doesn't trust him. They had a 1-2, and then they still had Duvernay there. So obviously they don't trust Bateman. They don't trust him to stay healthy. They don't trust him to run the right routes. I don't know what exactly it is. I feel like we haven't seen enough of him because, well, he gets led into getting smacked around every time with that inaccurate running back throwing the football. So he hasn't been able to play the field or be on the field very much in the NFL. So I don't think they trust Bateman. I think Bateman and Zay Flowers and Odell all are sliding down rankings quickly.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't a huge fan of this either. There was several wide receivers in the 1st round that I wanted to see go to good landing spots. I understand some of them went to decent spots for NFL, good NFL value for their teams, but for fantasy, they absolutely stunk it up landing spot wise. Arguably the only one that went to a good spot, like a great spot where he's got a chance to walk in the door and be a number 1, was my least favorite 1st-round graded wide receiver, which we'll talk about here in a minute. Yeah, I don't like this. To me, it hurts OBJ. It hurts Zay Flowers. It hurts Mark Andrews. It hurts Rashad Bateman a little bit. I think Lamar's just not good enough quarterback to sustain 4 relevant guys. Somebody's going to be the odd man out here. And for me, it's going to be the rookie who's got to prove himself before he gets going. So there we go. Buffalo, the Bills. I love these picks for the Bills. They had Dalton Kincaid out of the tight end out of Utah in the 1st round, and wide receiver Justin Shorter out of Florida in the 5th round. Brant, your take on these?
Kincaid is going to hurt Gabe Davis's value. They already have Dawson Knox there. I see Kincaid as a guy that could be flexed out into the slot and take up some of Gabe Davis's role there. So Gabe takes this hit, and I think Dalton Kincaid almost moves up to my tight end 1. I do love another landing spot that we'll talk, or another 2 landing spots later. But with that offense, that quarterback, that spot, his opportunity, I absolutely love Dalton Kincaid. As for Justin Shorter, I'll have to look a little bit deeper into him. I've watched a little bit of film on him, not much, but he has a possibility once again. the outside of Diggs, those wide receiver core has been up and down. So Shorter could have an opportunity to step in and get some workload, but it's one of those we got to see what happens through training camp with him before I get excited.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Dalton Kincaid was an amazing landing spot. I think when we get into rookie mock drafts, you're going to see this guy go in front of some of those first round wide receivers. I have him in front of Zay Flowers for sure at this point. Jury's still out on JSN and Quentin Johnson. But as far as Justin Shorter goes, this is a guy who was catching passes from Anthony Richardson last year. So he probably got a little extra exposure in that regard. But at this rate, it's very similar to what we're going to talk about with another landing spot later. When you get to pair a young wide receiver with a quarterback like Josh Allen, it's always a good thing that this is one of those guys that you want to take a dart throw at later in your drafts, potentially, specifically as training camp news start to come out. But for those of you drafting now, this is a guy that I'd be willing to take a dart throw at just simply because Isaiah McKenzie did leave there this year. Obviously, Cole Beasley hasn't been invited back out for training camp yet. I saw something he tweeted the other day saying, if you're not going to have me at training camp, I don't even want to play. That's my chance to bond, make an impact, whatever. So if he's not there and it's, Justin Shorter, Gabe Davis, and Stephon Diggs, this is a chance for that kid to come in and work, get some chemistry beat with Josh Allen and potentially be something. So don't hate the pick for Buffalo or Justin Shorter. Definitely worth a dart throw, in my opinion. Absolutely. All right, moving into one of the better draft nights, Houston put on a show specifically in that first round, taking C.J. Stroud 2 overall. Then they ended up trading back for a guy who's not fantasy relevant on this show, but I bet you Seth Berger talks about him on DWF and Will Anderson. But they did take Nathaniel Dell, the wide receiver out of Houston, in the 3rd round, and then Xavier Hutchinson, the Iowa State wide receiver, in the 6th round. So adding some new toys for CJ Stroud to play with, essentially.
Yeah, so my favorite pick, obviously, we knew Houston was probably going to this draft grabbing a quarterback. I know that, rumors were they weren't going to, rumors were they were, blah, blah, blah. We knew at some point they were going to add a quarterback, and what they did was amazing. And I'll tell you right now, the reaction from the crowd there at the draft when that trade was made for them to come back up to number 3 was pretty loud and pretty ridiculous. Everybody was on their phones trying to figure out what did they have to give up. So Stroud to Houston, he should be an immediate starter, immediate fantasy impact. As of right now, I'll probably have him in the QB2 range until it's more set in stone. I understand he should be the starter, but I'm not 100% sure if he can produce top 12 numbers yet. My favorite thing, and this is one of my sleepers I talked about a few weeks ago, Xavier Hutchinson. I absolutely love the fact he went to Houston. Not a whole lot there in the receiving core. I expect big things out of Xavier Hutchinson. I expect him, as long as he can stay healthy and make it through training camp, I expect him to be one of the top 3 wide receivers on that roster.
Yeah, Nathaniel Dell's the guy for me here that benefits most from this landing spot. I'm not sure Nico Collins is ever going to be that guy. Robert Woods is probably just there, to mentor these younger guys a little bit. But Nathaniel Dell, he gets that easy transition from the University of Houston right over to Houston Texans. Doesn't even have to pack his bags, doesn't have to move across town, whatever, stay in the same apartment if he chooses to. But he'll be catching passes from CJ Stroud. Again, I like this on a lot of different reasons. But CJ Stroud should come in and hit the ground running with the receiving core he's got now. And I like it to be spearheaded by Nathaniel Dell. So I think Dell is a guy that as we start moving through these mock drafts, these rookie mock drafts, again, the earlier you draft, it's going to be dependent early, but later, those of us who are doing our rookie drafts in August and late July, he is going to be a guy that I think moves into the back half of the first, potentially early 2nd round. So he's definitely a big winner for me in this draft. Okay, moving right along into Indy. We had quarterback Anthony Richardson out of Florida go 4 overall to the Colts. Then we had Josh Downs from UNC taken in the 3rd. Will Mallory taken it from Miami in the 5th, tight end, and then running back Evan Hall out of Northwestern went in the 5th round to Indy. So, Brant, what do you make of what the Indianapolis Colts did day 1?
So I got to say this, I got to put it out. Pete Carroll does. I know I'm talking about Seattle. Pete Carroll does hints for their draft. He did 6 hints prior to the draft kicking off, and everything that me and Dad were looking at, both Seahawks fan following that on Twitter, everything we did and looked up pointed to us taking Anthony Richardson. Every little hint he had out. So the minute Richardson went to Indy, we got nervous, and that could be why Seattle sat with 30 seconds left on the clock before they picked. Anthony Richardson going to Indy, instant starter in my mind. He may have to sit a game behind Gardner Minshew, depending on how training camp and everything goes. But I think Anthony Richardson will become a starter real quick there in Indy. His rushing mobility, his rushing upside, I absolutely love. He is a guy that will be on the cusp of top 12 for me just because of that rushing upside that he does produce. Josh Downs is a guy that I could easily see getting slid into the receiving core there. I know that Patrick right here just informed us that McKenzie is on Indy's roster now. I know that Paris Campbell moved on. I'd have to look at their roster, but I could see Josh Downs really coming in and taking over the 2 or 3 role there behind Pittman. The other two, not a whole lot. I don't see Hall getting enough reps to do anything behind Taylor. And tight end is almost wide open in Indy, but I think they drafted one 2 years ago or last year, Jelani Woods, that I think is the clear one there in tight end. So, but Indy does run 2 or 3 tight ends out there at times. So there's a chance he could have slight relevancy, but I don't think it's enough to really worry about.
Yeah, so for me, Brant, I actually think Evan Hall has a decent amount of value here as a later round running back. You're going to see Jonathan Taylor off the field at some point. They're not going to let him come back this year and get re-injured. Somebody's going to have to catch passes and be a third down pass catching back. I know Jonathan Taylor's capable, but he doesn't excel at it necessarily. And we all know that Anthony Richardson as a rookie is going to do what, Brian? He's going to target his tight end and his running back. We've been saying this since day one, and it never wavers here. I think Evan Hall will benefit from that as the season goes on. But with that being said, I think Josh Downs is probably going to have some impact in the slot. I think Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman will be the 2 guys on the outside. And as far as Will Mallory out of Miami, I expect him to be outside of any kind of super relevancy there. We've got some questions here. We've got OGGH on YouTube says, "Hey fellas, hope you're having a good night. You as well, OG. Definitely always a good time discussing the NFL draft." And then we've got Patrick, one of the man, the myth, the legend from the 4-hour live video the other night. How many rushing touchdowns does Richardson vulture, or how many rushes and touchdowns does Richardson vulture? Pat, just like we talked about on the live the other night, I think it's going to be it. There's going to be some downtick for JT from this as a fallout. It's almost unnatural for there not to be. However, I think JT will catch more passes this year. So it's going to be a give and take. I still think he's good enough to be inside my top 10. I'm not sure I have JT inside the top 5 right now. We'll see when I get to rankings. It's going to be really close.
Yeah, as for the rushing touchdowns, JT's just too big, so I don't see them taking the chance of hurting Richardson inside the red zone. I expect that to be a full time JT touches there. He's just such a big guy. As for rushes, I do see him taking away some, but I still think JT is a top 10 back.
Absolutely. All right, so let's move right along into Jacksonville Jaguars. They took tight end Brenton Strange out of Penn State in the 2nd round. They took running back Tank Bigsby out of Auburn in the 3rd. And wide receiver Parker Washington out of Penn State also in the 6th. So they took some Penn State boys as well as an Auburn running back. Brant, your take?
Strange is going to be a question mark with me. I think Ingram's still in town. I could be wrong. I believe they did re-sign Ingram to keep. Tank is going to be ETN's immediate handcuff. They obviously don't believe in Snoop, and they let James Robinson. They traded him off. So I think that Tank Bigsby is the immediate handcuff. So if you are an ETN owner, I am going to go after trying to get Tank Bigsby. Unfortunately, as an ETN owner here, I don't have a high enough draft capital to go get him. Parker Washington, it's going to be real different to see what you're going to do there because they have a pretty loaded receiving core.
Strange was strange, according to Patrick. I like it. Yeah, so Brant, here's my take on this. Parker Washington was a guy that I really liked. He fell a little bit, which makes me nervous. But again, Trevor Lawrence should be good. I mean, how long do we expect Zay Jones and this is going to elude me? Who am I missing there? Who's the other wide receiver? Christian Kirk, thank you. And Ridley's back. Okay, never mind. Parker Washington. Forgot about Ridley.
We had that discussion at the draft with the guy behind me. I had a Jacksonville fan behind me, and he couldn't think of his own wideouts.
I wasn't betting on Ridley being there. Anyway, Tank Bigsby. I think honestly, Brant, I'm going to get. This is a hill that I'm ready to be on. I've done some deep dives on the Twitter sphere, doing some research here. I think Tank Bigsby is going to be more in a running back by committee with ETN than a lot of people saw coming, and this is coming from another ETN owner. Again, wasn't drafted by the guys that are running that team now. The head coach can't stay healthy already. Had some super fun games last year for sure. But Tank Bigsby is a bruising running back. You're going to see him do more between the tackles running than you will see ETN. So I actually think this might be a reverse role here where you get him on some first and second downs, potentially short down work, goal line, and then you see ETN come in and be the hyper Alvin Kamara pass catching role, 10 to 12 touches or carries a game kind of a role here. Again, I'm early saying this, but Tank Bigsby was one of my favorite guys. And again, I've done some deep dives on Twitter. That's my take right now. I think Tank is going to have a role here. We'll see how defined it is as the season gets closer. All right, moving in, Kansas City wide receiver Rashee Rice out of SMU taken in the second round. Definitely one of my favorite landing spots that we talked about the week prior to the NFL draft starting. How do you feel about Rashee Rice?
I love it. Rashee Rice, he was a dog in college when he was healthy. He was a guy that was talked about being a first-round draft pick possibly early in the season. He had foot injuries that lingered with him all year. Well, guess what? So did Patrick Mahomes. So them two could go hang out, become best friends while making sure their feet are ready for next season. I absolutely love Rashee Rice. He is going to be a guy that is going to climb my rankings very, very high. This is one of those guys that I am looking forward to watching progress. He gets to go along. Patrick Mahomes, we know, is there for a while. Rashee Rice is there for at least the next 3 to 4 years. So this is going to be a guy that I expect to be hand in hand walking with Patrick Mahomes and moving up draft boards very, very quickly.
Yeah, I like Rashee Rice a lot. Obviously, one of the things I said on the show Monday last week was anybody who's catching passes from Patrick Mahomes is going to take a big bump in my book, specifically when you add somebody in the second round as well. Like you said, there's some injury question marks early, but there's really outside of Travis Kelce, there's not a whole lot there. Rashee Rice is one of the few guys that actually had some decent size outside of Quentin Johnston in this draft class. And Marquez Valdez-Scantling didn't really work as the size guy last year in Kansas City. And there's a whole bunch of other question marks at wide receiver. So I love Rashee Rice to pair with Patrick Mahomes. I think this is another guy that in a 12-team league you're going to see creep into the first round here. So definitely some value there. All right, moving on to the New York Jets. Big week for the Jets last week, but they added a running back, Israeli Abanikanda from Pitt in the 5th round, and Zach Kuntz, the tight end from Old Dominion, in the 7th round. Brant, anything here at all for you?
Depth. It's depth pieces in my mind. Breece Hall is a clear top 5 back in the NFL. And as for the tight end, I just think it was a late round draft pick. I think it's just depth on their roster. I don't think there's any fantasy relevancy here. And that's unfortunate because after you told me about this boy from Pitt, I went back and watched some film on him, and he's a pretty good guy, but I don't think he's going to cut into Breeze too much.
Yeah, not only Breeze, I'm not sure he moves in front of Michael Carter nor Bam Knight on the depth chart there. So this may have been just it's a head-scratching pick for sure for me.
His speed may make him a return man.
OG with a good take here on YouTube. I got to put this on the screen. Israeli Abi playing in Canada. So there you go. That's about right with where he fell in the draft here. So he's the type of guy that if he would have went someplace else, Brant, we would have been pretty excited about him. But here we see it. Moving on, Philly, they had a terrible draft. Don't really need to talk about anything they did defensively. It was just atrocious. But on offense, they drafted their quarterback of the future, Tanner McKee, out of Stanford in the 6th round. So Jalen Hurts, I'd be putting him on the trade block, folks.
Yeah, skip, swipe.
There's not a whole lot. Not a whole lot to talk about here.
Defense is top 5. That's all I got to
What
say.
what they're doing here is drafting somebody that has a pulse in this draft so they can let go of Marcus Mariota.
Yes.
It would be my guess as a Falcons fan. So
Yeah.
moving on, Pittsburgh tight end Darnell Washington out of Georgia in the 3rd round. Definitely a guy we talked about a little bit last week on the episode, Brant. Stud tight end, had a huge day at the combine. What do you make of the landing spot, though?
So I'm going to get into Pittsburgh. I know they drafted 2 offensive linemen early in the draft too. So they're adding protection for Najee. They're going back. They're adding protection, and this man right here is also adding protection. I believe he was the best blocker coming out. He will find his way on the field. He will be a safety blanket for Pickett. I know Fairmouth is still there, and Fairmouth will have fantasy relevancy, but Washington's a guy that's going to block, and he's going to get on that field, and he is a late-round flyer that I'd be taking in redraft leagues, and I'll be taking in late rounds in rookie drafts also.
Yeah, I think Darnell Washington's the type of guy who's going to come in and it wouldn't shock me to see this guy get some looks at fullback as well, just because of how big he is down around the goal line. I don't necessarily think he cuts into a whole lot of Freiermuth early. This could be 1-2 years from now that maybe we have to stop and take a different look at, just because of how big and how much of a freak athlete he is. But I too think, like you, Brant, I think he'll be more of a 7th offensive or a 6th offensive lineman on the field, almost in like jumbo personnel, stuff like that. He'll be on the field for some 2 tight end sets, just because of how good he is. But yeah, like you said, they did a lot in Pittsburgh to bump Najee back up, as well as Kenny Pickett for me for Dynasty. But that's a different show for a different day. So, all right, moving into your Seattle Seahawks, who effectively killed several names in this draft. I know you were excited about this draft for your team, but we're not talking about your team right now. We're talking about fantasy. Jackson Smith and Jigba out of Ohio State in the 1st round, Zach Charbonnet out of UCLA in the 2nd round, and Kenny McIntosh out of Georgia in the 7th. So a wide receiver and 2 running backs, Brant.
McIntosh, I believe, is going to, even the phone call said that McIntosh will be part of our special team. So no reason to worry about him. I believe he's going to be a return man along with DJ Dallas. Charbonnet goes from the 103, and I think he slides down 103 running back, the 3rd best running back in this class. And I don't think he's there anymore. That will look a little better when I actually get down to ranking these rookies and actually putting them down. Jackson Smith-Njigba. Now, this is a great addition to the team. We have probably one of the best wide receiving corps in the NFL. This is going to be a year or 2 in the making before he can actually show what he's really worth. I was talking to my dad tonight, and I think this might be the last year we see Tyler Lockett in a blue and green uniform. I think that we will be moving on from him after this year. But Jackson Smith, I don't think I can have him at the best wide receiver with the best landing spot anymore, but I think he will be great for Dynasty, but it's going to have to be a year at least before he makes that huge impact that we all thought he could be.
Here's my take on this, Brant. I think Geno Smith takes a bump. Obviously, it would be unfair to say his offense got better around him and he goes backwards. But my take on this is that Geno surprised a lot of folks next year. And unless Geno ends up being Patrick Mahomes in disguise, he ain't supporting 3 top 30 wide receivers. It's just not in his nature. Nor do I expect in either Kenneth Walker or Zach Charbonnet to be top 10 running backs. I just don't see that path being there. I think they'll both be somewhat relevant in fantasy. But Charbonnet, like you said, there's definitely some other running backs that I'm going to move in front of him now. Jackson Smith and Jigba went from being the number 1 wide receiver in this class for me to probably the number 3. I still keep him above Zay Flowers, but I could see myself, if you need early production, potentially moving Rashee Rice in front of him. But right now, I think, Seattle really just killed a lot of this draft for me, but you're going to be drafting for the future. So that's not great if you're a top 3 pick in the Dynasty draft, because that means you probably need some help. But outside of Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson, I'm not sure there's a whole lot of help in this draft class as far as instant impact. Moving on to the Cleveland Browns. Wide receiver Cedric Tillman out of Tennessee in the 3rd. I know that's a name you liked a lot heading into the draft. And then Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the UCLA quarterback, was also drafted here as a potential backup. I hear you huffing and puffing. You must not love this.
DTR was a guy that I wanted in that round. I literally was saying it right as his name came across the board. I wanted him to be in Seattle. I wanted him to back up Geno. I wanted to see what he could do. He has nothing. He has nothing to me unless Watson goes down hurt or decides to visit a few more massage parlors. Tillman's an interesting guy to me. I know that's a loaded wide receiving core right now, but Tillman was a guy that was very interesting to me. He's a guy that I could see myself taking a late round draft pick on in startup leagues or in redraft leagues, but he won't have an immediate impact, I don't think, but he is definitely a guy that's interesting to me.
Yeah, this pick would have been really fun for me, I think, had they not have traded for Elijah Moore at the beginning of the offseason. I think Cedric Tillman's a project pick at this point. They drafted, Bell last year out of Purdue, who I had high hopes for. I know you did as well. So this just really murkies the waters for me here. I'm not outside of Cooper and potentially Elijah Moore. I'm not sure I'm taking anybody. Donovan Peoples-Jones, obviously, but outside of those three, I'm not touching any of these wide receivers.
I think they forgot they traded for Elijah Moore when they put that pick in for Tillman.
Could be. I certainly did not as I was scratching my head. Moving on to the Dallas Cowboys, tight end Luke Schoonmaker out of Michigan in the second round and running back Deuce Vaughn out of Kansas State in the sixth round. Real quick, I don't know if you saw it, Brand, or not, but Deuce Vaughn's father is a scout for the Dallas Cowboys. He actually got to call his son and ask his son if he wanted to come to work with him next week. Definitely a surreal moment, something as a father I'm sure we could all wish to emulate. Although I'm not sure where we work, we want any of our children coming to see us.
No, thank you.
Not on either side of it. But again, different conversation for a different day. Luke Schoonmaker, Brant, Deuce Vaughn, is there anything here for you?
Deuce, I think, Deuce is almost the same skill set as Tony Pollard. He's quick. He's got great hands. Going to be interesting to see how that backfield shakes out. But as of right now, he's down the rankings for me. Shoemaker, that's an interesting one. I think he moves up a few spots for me because he's almost an instant start there now that Dalton Schultz gone. I think Jake Ferguson, Patrick's put it out there. Jake Ferguson was the only thing really left on the roster there. So I do like Shoemaker.
Yeah, Schoonmaker, I think that you're going to see similar back to prior to Dalton Schultz being Dalton Schultz when everybody was trying to guess if it was going to be, Darwin and or Blake Jarwin, excuse me, and Dalton Schultz. Everybody was guessing. I think you're going to see something similar here. We'll see. I also did skip over Jalen Brooks, the wide receiver out of South Carolina in the seventh. Doesn't really move the needle for me a whole lot. I do think early on to start the season, both of these tight ends will be involved until we see one of them take a step on the other. So we'll see how that plays out. Denver with kind of a head-scratching move. Wide receiver Marvin Mims out of Oklahoma in the second. Brant, I know they kind of tried to move both Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton, or they talked about it at the beginning of the offseason. Obviously never came to fruition. What do you think of Marvin Mims going to Denver in the second round?
So draft night, I absolutely loved it because I thought they weren't going to pick up Judy's fifth year. And then I look at it this morning or maybe yesterday morning and they picked up Judy's fifth year. So that's definitely a head scratcher. I'm not sure how that's going to work. I assume he will pick up instantly the wide receiver 3 role, but unless Russell does something and looks a whole lot better, I don't see him supporting 3 wideouts.
Yeah, Tim Patrick is also coming back from knee injury that kept him out last year too. So Courtland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, those guys are under contract for the foreseeable future. Obviously, Jerry Jeudy coming off of his rookie deal next year. But yeah, this is definitely an interesting move here. So moving on, we have the Detroit Lions with maybe the biggest head-scratching draft picks of the evening. But now I've grown to love them quite a bit. Running back Jahmyr Gibbs from Alabama at the 12th pick. Tight end Sam Laporta out of Iowa in the second round. Quarterback Hendon Hooker from Tennessee in the third round. And wide receiver Antonio Green out of University of North Carolina in the 7th.
Gibbs is now the consistent second running back to come off the board, especially in rookie drafts, and definitely could be looking to the future. Sam Laporta, absolutely love. They moved on from Hawkinson, so Laporta is going to step into almost an immediate role as for the other two, Hendon Hooker's going to sit a couple years behind Goff. I think Goff still has at least 2 more years on their contract. But Hooker's going to need at least this year. I know you're not huge on him. I like the landing spot, but he's definitely not really worth anything in redraft leagues this year. Late round flyer in super flex leagues, I would assume. Other than that, you'll probably see him on waivers in most leagues. And the wide receiver Green, I once again, maybe a return man. I'd have to look into him a little more.
Yeah, I think Hendon Hooker, what's disgusting to me is that he's 2 years younger than Jared Goff, who's been in the league for, just ever and a day, who's been to a Super Bowl. I don't understand it. But at the same time, Tennessee or Detroit's going to have to go someplace at some point. I know Jared Goff's under a pretty big contract. Don't love that. Sam Laporta was slowly creeping up my tight end rankings going into the draft. He fell into a spot that I'm absolutely just infatuated with. I could see myself having him in front of Michael Mayer potentially, who also fell to a pretty good landing spot that we'll talk about here in a moment. But Jahmyr Gibbs is the 1-2 in my mind. He goes right behind Bijan in non-superflex startups. But yeah, as far as Hooker's draft stock goes, I think he's somewhere right around there with Will Levis, who we're going to talk about here in a few minutes, Brant. I could see the argument being made for Hendon Hooker as the third quarterback to come off the board in dynasty drafts. But yeah, I'm just not a huge fan, not sold on him due to his age. So there we go. All right, moving on. Miami Dolphins running back Devin Achane out of Texas A&M in the 3rd round. Wide receiver Elijah Higgins out of Stanford in the 6th.
Higgins, not much. I don't see much relevancy there with Waddle and Hill there. Devin Achane out of Texas A&M, another name for me to butcher throughout the season because he will have some relevancy because the 2 backs that are in front of him can never, ever, ever, ever stay healthy. And unfortunately, if you own both of those guys, this is a guy that you may want to try to get later in your rookie drafts. I don't think he creeps into the 1st round. I definitely could see him being a second, middle to end of the 2nd round draft pick in most rookie drafts. But he's definitely going to have some relevancy there in that backfield.
He is a 1st round pick for me in my book at this point in rookie drafts, as long as it's non-super flex. If it's non-super flex, he's a 1st round running back that I see being taken just because opportunity is going to exist for a lot of the reasons you said. I think this phases Myles Gaskin out of Miami. And then you just have some dudes that are you and I's age with hips and legs that look like they've been carrying our weight for years. So definitely going to be some opportunity for Devin Achane. Like you said about Higgins, not a whole lot for me there, just simply due to the fact that, again, Tyreek and Jalen are both there already. So, it would take something pretty special for him to surpass those guys. Moving on to Minnesota Vikings, wide receiver Jordan Addison out of USC in the 1st round, quarterback Jaron Hall from BYU in the 5th, and running back Dwayne McBride out of UAB in the 7th.
McBride is right here. So Addison, I absolutely love. You moved on from Thielen, you replaced him right away. Addison almost moves into my top wide receiver in this class because they do move the ball so much down the field through the air. Hall is a late round draft pick in most rookies because Kirk Cousins is not going to be there for a while. And I think Hall is going to prove that he can be the heir apparent. Yeah, he looked good in college. McBride is interesting to me with all the Cook news. Then you leave Kane Naganu. I know I just messed that up. And Madison if Cook moves on. McBride's a guy that could be sneaky to get into that backfield and steal some touches if Cook does move on. So McBride's a guy that I could see being in a lot of rumors, a lot of training camp news. So I think he's almost worth the late round flyer as of right now.
Yeah, Jordan Addison is 100% my wide receiver 1 right now in this class. Love the landing spot. Obviously, don't expect him to take much value from Justin Jefferson, but that Thielen role is completely open. It definitely kills KJ Osborne, who was a guy that I tried to trade for early into the offseason after Adam Thielen left. Thankfully, I wasn't able to acquire any shares of him there because that would have looked terrible at this point. But yeah, outside of Jordan Addison, I don't see a whole lot here. If Dalvin Cook happens to be cut, it's going to be the Alexander Madison show moving forward next year. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. You've got the New England Patriots, 2 wide receiver additions in the 6th round, Keyshawn Boutte out of LSU and Demario Douglas out of Liberty, both again in the 6th round.
Who knows? It's Bill Belichick. Who knows? Boutte at one point was a guy we were talking about as a first-round draft pick, a top 3 wide out of this class. Fell all the way down to the 6th round. Could be his legal issues. Could be the fact that he, likes to jump on trains. Who knows? But it's Bill Belichick's offense, so it'll be a little difficult to decipher these guys out.
Toot, toot. Yes. I do think Keyshawn Boutte is going to have some relevancy in the NFL. I do think this will be a guy that'll be somebody's got to catch passes there. I mean, it's no longer going to be Jacoby Myers, Brant, who you held out hope for just a smidge too long, in my opinion. But somebody's got to catch passes there. Why not Keyshawn Boutte? For that same route, why not Demario Douglas, since they went in the same round? We'll see what that turns into. But
Parker
one of these guys
will be in there right now.
Well, true, but somebody's got to catch passes. So why not these guys? All right, moving on. We've got the Cincinnati Bengals, wide receiver Charlie Jones out of Purdue in the 4th, running back Chase Brown out of Illinois in the 5th, and wide receiver Andre Iosivas out of Princeton in the 6th round. Brian, I don't know if you want to try to pronounce that last one for us, or if we're good with where I left it.
I'm good with it. And the guy out of Princeton draws a little to my mind. Unfortunately, where he went is not a very good spot. I saw some film on this guy pop up on my Twitter. Let me check this out. This is a hard worker. He will make special teams, probably not going anywhere else besides special teams. Chase Brown is the guy that is interesting to me with all the Mixon news. Even though they came out and they said Mixon's our starter, he's our running back. Chase Brown's a guy that you and me both love out of Illinois. And he's a guy that could easily cut into that role and easily have a Samaje Perine role right out of the gate.
Listen, I'm going to say this as far as Dynasty goes. If I'm a Mixon owner, I'm doing anything and everything in my power to make sure I acquire Chase Brown because Mixon's days are limited. This guy's one issue away from being out of the NFL as it is. I'd be shocked if he's on the roster come opening day where things sit now anyway. So we'll see. It's easy to stand by a guy when there's no legal charges, but as soon as those hit court, things become a little bit different. But we'll see. Chase Brown, I definitely like a lot. Obviously, for Charlie Jones and Andre Iosivas, it's going to be hard for those guys to get any kind of role with T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and Jamar Chase all there playing wide receiver, catching passes from Joe Burrow. So I don't expect a whole lot from those guys. Charlie Jones could be the eventual replacement to Tyler Boyd, potentially. Definitely got some good hands there, but it'll be a while before that happens. Speaking of legal trouble, Brant, the New Orleans Saints, drafted running back Kendre Miller from TCU in the 3rd round, quarterback Jake Honer from Fresno State in the 3rd round, and wide receiver A.T. Perry from Wake Forest in the 6th.
I love Miller. If you're a Kamara owner, you better go get Miller. Miller's got some great speed. He has good hands out of the backfield. This is a guy that could almost easily take over the RB1 role if something happens to Kamara.
Yeah, same here. Kendre Miller's definitely a guy that I expect to if Kamara ends up not playing due to suspension, I'd expect Kendre Miller and Jamal Williams to be a 1-2 punch out of that backfield, running back by committee. So there will be some value to be had there in that backfield with him. A.T. Perry was a wide receiver I really liked. Don't necessarily love his landing spot, but let's wait and see what happens with Michael Thomas before we completely cast judgment. I know they restructured the contract, but this dude's been nursing his injury for 6-7 years now, it feels like at this point. So we'll see if we ever get Michael Thomas back on the field. But A.T. Perry's a guy I definitely like if Michael Thomas does not end up playing. All right, moving on to the Washington Commanders, running back Chris Rodriguez out of the University of Kentucky in the 6th round. Anything for you there, Brant?
Skip. I don't think he has any relevancy. You got Robinson and Gibson there. I know I talked about Rodriguez early in the season last year when we were breaking down some rookies. terrible landing spot. It would take a miracle or a big injury for him to take over any type of fantasy value there.
Okay. Moving on. Los Angeles Rams quarterback Stetson Bennett out of Georgia in the 4th round. Tight end Davis Allen out of Clemson in the 5th. Wide receiver Puka Nuka out of BYU in the 5th. And running back Zach Evans out of Ole Miss in the 6th.
Bennett and Stafford, old teammates, right? Old teammates, right?
Gotta be. Graduate high school the same year.
Puka Nuka is an interesting guy to me. Into a receiving core that it's really Cooper Kupp and Van Jefferson. The rest is almost wide open. That wide receiver 3 role is almost wide open. And technically, really, the wide receiver 2 role's open because Van Jefferson hasn't been anything consistent. Zach Evans is interesting. We both really liked him coming out. But as long as I think that them drafting him in the 6th means that they're pretty confident in what they're about to get out of Cam Akers.
Yeah, Cam Akers and Kyron Williams, the guy that they got last year. I believe Kyron Williams was taken about the same round just due to injury. Had Kyron Williams been healthy last year, he would have went much higher. So I do think Zach Evans is pretty low on the depth chart, but we've seen Akers do some funky things. They obviously don't necessarily believe in Kyron Williams. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have added another back here. So Zach Evans, there is some value, I think, as a handcuff to Akers late in drafts. He makes some sense. Puka Nuka, like you said, Brant, I see some value too. Everything else here is just kind of a meh point for me. So Tampa Bay Buccaneers drafted tight end Payne Durham out of Purdue in the 5th and wide receiver Trey Palmer out of Nebraska in the 6th. Brant, anything here for you fantasy-wise?
Keep an eye out on that tight end room, and that's about all I have out of the Bucs.
Yeah, for me, Trey Palmer's got some relevancy. He was the fastest clocked wide receiver at the combine. So if you're in one of those leagues that you get double dip points for wide receivers as well as special teams returns and stuff, he could have some role here. I do think he's going to take over that Scotty Miller role on that team next year. But again, the quarterback play is going to hinder any kind of explosions out of him. But again, this is a dynasty. This could be a good long-term stash just because of how quick he is, but not a whole lot there for me either, Brant. Moving on to the Las Vegas Raiders, tight end Michael Mayer out of the University of Notre Dame in the 2nd round, wide receiver Trey Tucker out of Cincinnati in the 3rd, and quarterback Aiden O'Connell or Officer Farva out of Purdue in the 4th round.
Goodbye, Waller. Hello, young Waller with Mayer, but too many mouths to feed there. I don't know if Garoppolo can really do it. He does like his tight end. We did see that with Kittle. Mayer is probably moves into my 3rd tight end. He was my 101 tight end. But I can't. I don't love it too much with Adams there and Jacoby there and Renfro there. Mm-hmm. But Mayer will be the number 1 tight end on that, and we do know that Garoppolo does like him. So Mayer does have relevancy. Tucker, I don't think so. And O'Connell could very well have relevancy if Garoppolo gets hurt.
I mean, Farva in Vegas, that just seems like a natural thing, right? He was from Super Troopers, but he could have easily been on
shenanigans.
He could have easily been on Reno 911 too. So, but Michael Mayer for me, I do like this pick, but like you, Brant, I've got Sam Laporta and Dalton Kincaid both above him at this point. But I do think this is going to be this was a great tight end class as a whole, and it just kept unfolding that way as the night went on. We saw a lot of tight ends taken in the 2nd round. So yeah, definitely enjoyed Michael Mayer there. Trey Tucker, kind of like you said, Jacoby Myers, Hunter Renfro, and Devontae Adams all in front of him. I think it's going to be hard for him to get his licks in, but we will see how that shakes out. Moving on to the Chicago Bears, which I'm sure you had to hear plenty about this while you were down there. Running back Roschon Johnson out of Texas in the 4th, and wide receiver Tyler Scott out of Cincinnati in the 4th.
That backfield disgusts me now. What do? You got Foreman, who's shown, flashes. You got Herbert, who's shown flashes. And you got Roschon Johnson, who looked like could possibly be an RB1 whenever he was on the field and through his combine and his pro day. That's a disgusting backfield, but I think Roschon Johnson will end up with some dynasty value, but that may be a year or two to unfold. As for Tyler Scott, a wide receiver room's almost wide open with with the Darnell Mooney didn't perform that well this year. I know you got DJ Moore there as the one, and Cole Kmet is absolutely one of my favorites. Tyler Scott could easily have a role in that offense.
Yeah. So for me, Brant, the running backs in Chicago, I don't want to own any of them, but if I own one, I want to own them all because I don't want somebody else to look like a genius when one of these guys ends up being an RB1 potentially and the others fade into dust like Thanos snapped his fingers. But for me, I think Roschon Johnson's got a chance to be the most talented back in that backfield. We'll see how that pans out. Tyler Scott, like you mentioned, we're still waiting on Chase Claypool. If that's ever going to be a thing, it's got to be soon. Darnell Mooney is going to be better as a wide receiver too, I would think. And DJ Moore can't get any worse than what he was when he was in Carolina. So again, going to be hard to get a role there just because I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of passing opportunity to begin with. But we will see. All right, Panthers. Quarterback Bryce Young went number 1 out of Alabama in the first round, and then wide receiver Jonathan Mingo out of Ole Miss in the second. Are we both in unanimous agreement that these two should be the premier players on that team for the years to come?
Absolutely. I think Bryce Young could easily move into the one spot in rookie drafts for QBs. If he wasn't already there in your rankings. And Mingo is a guy that's going to climb up my rankings with that landing spot. There's nobody really there that's going to compete too much with him early. So as long as them two get into training camp and develop some chemistry, this could be your future of the Carolina Panthers and pretty fun future to look at.
Yeah, Jonathan Mingo is another wide receiver for me that's got to be moving into the back half of the first, if not extremely early second, just because he's going to come in and have that instant connection. I do think year one, I'm going to stand on this hill, Brant. You may have to push me off at some point, but Adam Thielen should be the best wide receiver in Carolina year one, but I do think Jonathan Mingo takes that over moving into year
don't
two.
Draft any linemen over 6 foot tall. That's all I can say.
Yeah,
we had that issue in Seattle.
Bryce Young would be a new fan favorite if I was your height, Brant. But anyway, Green Bay, they waited till Aaron Rodgers got out of town and they said, let's just add a whole mess of fantasy relevant guys here. Tight end Luke Musgrave, Oregon State, 2nd round. Wide receiver Jaden Reed, Michigan State, 2nd round. Tight end Tucker Kraft, South Dakota State, 3rd round. Quarterback Sean Clifford, Penn State, 5th round. Wide receiver Davion Wicks, Virginia, 5th round. Running back Lou Nichols, Central Michigan, 7th round. And wide receiver Grant DeBose out of Charlotte in the 7th round.
Musgrave's a guy that I could easily see going into my tight end 3 in this class. He's going to go right into a starting role there with a young QB who's going to lean on his tight ends and running backs. Jaden Reed is another guy that I absolutely loved coming into this draft, and he landed in a great spot where he could almost have an instant role. And Kraft out of South Dakota State. That's going to be that battle there between him and Musgrave, who takes over the one there. Now, this one there, Clifford, I just want to bring up real fast. He started as an 8th string quarterback as a walk-on in Penn State and had that dog in him to get all the way up to the top QB. So it's the guy that he's going to sit there and he's going to fight for a roster spot. So definitely keep an eye on him. I believe he will be the QB2 there in Green Bay.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot else there. It's Jordan Love and then Clifford. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Like you mentioned, I think the tight ends are going to have some relevancy. Jaden Reed out of Michigan State, I'm going to be honest here, I don't know a whole lot about him. Going to have to dive in to see. I would imagine he may pull from Romeo Dobbs a little bit, but I still expect Christian Watson to be the one there going into next season. So there you have it. As far as Lou Nichols, the running back out of Central Michigan, the only one they drafted, I don't see a whole lot there. AJ Dillon's still on his rookie deal. Aaron Jones has still got one as well. So moving on to the Tennessee Titans, quarterback Will Levis with his amazing slide. I'm sure you guys were speechless at the draft as that was happening out of the University of Kentucky in the 2nd round. Running back Tajee Spears out of Tulane in the 3rd. Tight end Josh Weil out of Cincinnati in the 5th. And wide receiver Colton Dowell out of University of Tennessee Martin in the 7th.
Chiga, Oga, whatever.
Okwanku, Patrick, and Patrick Jaquez and Josh Rodriguez taught me how to say that on air.
Okay, well, I think his job is safe there in Tennessee. They must have really liked what they saw. That's why they waited till the 5th round to even pull one off the board. Will Levis, I think he sits behind Tannehill this year. I know they tried and offered multiple trade offers to get into the first round to get his 5th-year option, but nobody was biting on it. So they had to trade up to the early second. I think Levis will be a 1 year away from starter. And as long as he can actually keep throwing the ball downfield, I think Treylon Burks takes a little boost up after Tannehill leaves. And Tajee Spears, absolutely love it. That takes a little bit of the workload off of Derrick Henry. Not a whole lot. It's going to take a little bit of the workload. But Tajee Spears is an absolutely electrifying back with his hands, and he could absolutely make a whole lot of fantasy relevancy being the third down back there in Tennessee.
So for me, Brant, Will Levis, I think, is going to ultimately end up being the starter at some point in this backfield, right? Because we just didn't ever end up seeing anything. We didn't ever end up seeing anything out of Malik Willis last year. But for me, Tajee Spears, if these rumblings and rumors that I'm hearing are true, this guy's a complete bust, and it's going to be an awful pick for the Tennessee Titans. There's some rumblings that his knee. He has arthritis in his knee so bad that it's that of like an 85-year-old man.
Todd Gurley 2.0.
It's bone on bone already at this point, so that doesn't bode well for a long career, especially if you're drafting him in the third round. There's probably expectations to maybe be the ultimate Derrick Henry replacement. I'm not sure he's going to be around. Derrick Henry may play longer than Tajee Spears. If that news is true, it's yet to be confirmed. But if that happens to be a thing, I don't love Tajee Spears. All right. Wide receiver, the New York Giants, the football Giants, added wide receiver Jalen Hyatt out of Tennessee in the third round and running back Eric Gray out of Oklahoma in the fifth.
Hyatt is a guy that could easily make his way into the top 3 wide receivers on that team. He absolutely, in my mind, has fantasy relevancy almost right out of the gate. He's very good with his hands. He's explosive. He's a guy that I would probably be taking in the second round. Obviously, I'm saying second round for a lot of people because I haven't sat down and actually done my rankings. Eric Gray is the handcuff to Saquon Barkley in my mind.
Yeah, so Jalen Hyatt, again, I think you got a bunch of wide receivers in New York that are really good at one thing or the other, but not a whole bunch of good things. But Jalen Hyatt does project as a very good field stretcher. You already kind of got that underneath short route guy in Wan'Dale Robinson / Sterling Shepard. And Isaiah Hodgins kind of showed he could do a little bit of everything, but nothing spectacular last year. So I do think there's going to be a yin and a yang for all these guys in the pass catching roles in New York. As far as Eric Gray, for me, Saquon's Barkley's handcuff unless Saquon refuses to play on that tag, which is looking increasingly likely as we count down the days to the start of the season. I know we're a long way out, and the panic button box hasn't even been lifted yet to press the button on Saquon. But if we get closer to the season and your rookie drafts are in August and September, and Saquon's still not signing that, you may draft him earlier than what we would if you were drafting right now. So definitely something to pay attention to there. The Los Angeles Chargers added wide receiver Quentin Johnston out of TCU in the first round, wide receiver Darius Davis out of TCU in the fourth round, and quarterback Max Duggan out of TCU in the seventh round. They said, Philadelphia Eagles, hold our beer about being a college mascot. We're going to become the Los Angeles Horned Frogs. So here we go.
If Herbert goes down, give me all 3 of those guys. He's already got chemistry with them. No, okay. Johnson instantly steps into the wide receiver 3 role, I think, which then will instantly become the wide receiver 2. Because Allen or Williams, one of those will probably get hurt fairly early in the season like they always do. Johnson definitely has immediate impact. He probably moves up. I know we were talking about him being the best wideout. He definitely was the best wideout till I dug in a little deeper to him. Then he slid, and I think he slid to probably about the 4th or 5th, and I think that's about where I still would have him. I'd have to, look a little maybe 3rd, but I absolutely love the landing spot there. Davis could make an impact if there's a lot of injuries, but I don't think he passes Palmer as the 4th wideout. And Duggan is obviously the handcuff to Herbert.
Yeah. Quentin Johnston, for me, knee-jerk reaction night of the draft, I was like, yep, that's it. Dude's the wide receiver 1. That's who you got to take at 102 in drafts. Then the smoke screen settled, things cleared. I do think right now I'd have him at 3 in front of Rashee Rice. And who was the other name that I was considering having up there? Anyway, I have him outside of it right now. But again, I haven't sat down and compiled my rankings. Those will be coming shortly. But yeah, I'm still not sold on Quentin Johnston just because he doesn't catch the ball and doesn't use his frame to his advantage. So he's going to have some work cut out for him there. Moving on to last but not least, the San Francisco 49ers, tight end Cameron Latu out of Alabama in the 3rd round, tight end Braden Willis out of Oklahoma in the 7th, and wide receiver Ronnie Bell out of Michigan in the 7th.
See which tight end emerges as the number 2, and they will have some type of value if Kittle goes down, and that's about it for San Francisco. As for that wide receiver, swipe left.
Yeah, I'm completely out on all this. George Kittle's still the guy for me, but I can see the argument for potentially if you're a Kittle owner and you've got a 3rd or a 4th round pick in your draft and you just don't fall in love with anything else, maybe you cuff Kittle moving on for the future. But other than that, not a whole lot. Brant, I think this draft was a fun draft as far as all the trades we saw of teams trading picks. Not a whole lot of players mentioned moving either way. I think I did see Adam Troutman was traded to Denver on day 3, which is again not a move the needle move. Yeah, I know you were a big Troutman guy for a while, but his days have long gone at this point. But fun draft, and it's just not a lot of great landing spots for our fantasy guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it was a record-breaking draft. I think I read it was 42 total trades, most trades in a draft night. And it's like you said, some of these landing spots are just atrocious and gross. There was a few decent ones, but nothing really to write home about.
Yep. I completely agree, Brant. So I think that wraps it up for us here this week. So as always, stay hungry
and stay fat, my friends.